Do you feel like you're drowned in a sea of tax forms, receipts, and confusing rules? Are you worried about making a mistake that could cost you money or even trigger an audit? Listen, tax season can feel like a nightmare for anyone. Small business owners, 9 to 5 workers, or those juggling multiple income streams. But here's the good news. You don't have to do it alone. Today I'll help you figure out when it's time to call in the pros to handle your taxes. Plus we'll answer a powerful question from a listener, Kassandra, who is struggling with this very issue.
In a world where crushing debt keeps you trapped, where living paycheck to paycheck has become your new normal, and where the dream of retirement seems impossibly out of reach, there's hope. Join financial evangelist Ralph E. Stepp Jr., a man who's walked through the fire of financial failure and emerged stronger on the other side. Welcome to Ask Ralph, the show where real-world experience meets biblical truth to break the bondage of financial despair. Get ready to take control of your money, break free from the financial stress, and align your resources with God's purpose for your life. This is Ask Ralph with Ralph E. Stepp Jr.
Welcome to the Ask Ralph show, where we master your finances from a Christian perspective. I'm your host, Ralph, and I'm so glad you're here today. For new listeners, this is the place where we combine sound financial advice with biblical wisdom to help you achieve financial freedom and grow in your faith. Now, before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank you for being part of the journey. You know, every time you tune in, send in your questions, or share this podcast with others, you allow me to live out my calling, and that's to help people like you achieve financial success while honoring God in the process. I'm truly blessed to have this platform, this chance to connect with so many hardworking, faith-driven people. So thank you for trusting me with your time, with your questions, and your financial concerns. It means the world to me to walk this road with you. Well, let's dive into today's topic. I received a letter from Kassandra. Now, Kassandra's a small business owner, and her words really hit home with me. This is what Kassandra said. She said, "Hi, Ralph. I've been running my small photography business for 3 years now, and every tax season feels like a nightmare. I try to handle my taxes myself, but I'm overwhelmed by all the forms and rules. I'm never sure if I'm doing it right, and I constantly worry I'm leaving money on the table, or worse, making a mistake that could get me in trouble. I want to honor God by being a good steward of my business finances, but I don't know if I can afford to hire someone to help me. How do I know if it's time to bring in a professional?" Well, Kassandra, thank you so much for sharing your story. And listen, I know many listeners will relate to your struggles. Well, let me start by saying this, Kassandra. You're doing an incredible job. First off, running a business is not easy, and your desire to honor God with your finances tells me you're already on the right path. And listen, this is the truth. Tax season is overwhelming. It's especially overwhelming for those business owners, and I deal with those folks every day. I deal with business owners, I deal with individuals, and here's the thing, it's not just about forms and numbers. If it was, it'd be so much simpler. But it's about the fear of making mistakes. It's the fear of missing those deductions, and it's this constant uncertainty because so many people get into this that don't really know what they're doing. But here's the truth. It's a truth bomb. We're going to start off the episode with this. You don't have to do it alone. See, God doesn't expect you to carry this burden by yourself. And asking for help is one of the wisest things you can do. Listen, and not just for your business, not just for your personal men, but for your peace of mind. Now, a quick reminder for Kassandra and all of our other listeners. This show exists to answer questions just like yours. And if you've got questions just like Kassandra, you can go to justaskralph.com. And don't forget, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m., I host a live show to answer your financial questions in real time. And you can join me at askralphpodcast.com/live. A lot of people ask me, Ralph, well, how do I get to it? It's real simple. Just go to askralphpodcast.com/live and you'll be right there in the feed. Well, let's turn to scripture for guidance. The Bible has so much wisdom about managing resources and, more importantly, knowing when to seek help. So today's verse comes from the book of Proverbs. It's from chapter 15, verse 22, and it says this: "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Well, Kassandra, I thought about it. I said, this verse reminds us of your story directly. Because here's the deal. God doesn't expect us to have all the answers. That's just the truth. He doesn't expect us to know everything. And that's why he places people in front of us. He places advisors and mentors and professionals. He puts those people in our lives to help us succeed. And see, here's the thing you need to understand. A lot of people don't get this. Hiring a tax professional isn't failure. It isn't you've been working all weekend at this tax return and you're stressed out, all your pencils are broken, and your hair is sticking straight up, and you've seen the pictures online. But hiring a tax professional isn't failure, it's wisdom. And I love this verse because it shows asking for help is part of God's plan, and we all want to live in God's plan. So let me share a story about James. Now, James was a small business owner I worked with a few years ago. Like you, Kassandra, James was trying to handle his taxes. He did this every year alone. He didn't want to spend the money. He thought he was saving money. He thought, you know what? I don't need to pay somebody to do this. I can go online and do this myself. Back in the day, he would probably thought he could find the forms and he could do it himself. But then one year, James was working on his tax return and he made an error. And that error triggered a letter from the IRS. And listen, if you've ever got one of those letters, they are no fun. And in fact, in the next couple of days, this is going to be tax week on the Ask Ralph show. And I'm going to talk about what you do when you get one of those letters. So stay tuned. This week, I'm going to be talking about that. So James had done his own tax return and he got this letter from the IRS and they were requesting additional payments. Well, not only were they requesting payments, they were asking for penalty. They were asking for interest. And James, he shared with me before, when he came in to talk about this, he said, Ralph, I honestly didn't know what to do. I was sort of startled. And he said, it stressed me out. And I didn't know where to turn. Now, at the time, James had been doing his own stuff. Like I said, I didn't know James. He got on the Facebook and someone had mentioned my name. And that's when James reached out to me. So he scheduled an appointment. He came in and sat down. And when he first sat down, I could tell this guy was nervous. Like, he wasn't sure about what to expect. And he sat down with me and he said, Ralph, he says, I don't really know where to start. I got this notice and I just don't know what the IRS is even talking about. I'm good at my work. As I recall, I think he was a carpenter, built houses or did renovations or something like that. And he was very good at that. I mean, he showed me some pictures on his iPhone about the work he had done. But when it came to taxes, he was out of his element. Just like, let me be honest with you, if I was out there working on building a house, I'd be out of my element as well. I think the walls would be crooked and you don't even want to go there. I am not a handy kind of person. So anyway, James reached out to me and I did the same thing I do with most of my clients. First thing I said, James, first thing I want you to do is relax. Let's take a look. Let's digest what's going on here. I started by reviewing his past tax return. And when I did that, it was interesting because not only did I see the error that the IRS had found, but I also noticed that he had missed out on some deductions that he could have taken in other areas where he ended up overpaying his taxes. Now, the particular issue in question in this particular case was really something very simple. He had received a 1099 for a bank account that he had, and he forgot to put it on his tax return. So, gets this notice, looks at it, and the IRS was asking for additional money. They were asking for penalty and interest. And I said, James, we can fix this. We can work this out. So what I did was we actually prepared an amended return in this case because there were some things he could have taken for his business that he didn't do. And we sent that amended return into the IRS. And of course, the IRS didn't, send the squad out to grab him. They sent him another letter and they said, okay, James, well, we've made these adjustments, but you still owe us penalty and interest. And I don't remember the exact amount. It wasn't a ton of money. But I was able to write a letter to the IRS. I negotiated this on his behalf. We clarified the issue, and I got him to waive the penalties completely, which was fantastic. Now, he still had to pay the interest because he did, in fact, owe a little interest on the deal. But we got him to waive the penalties altogether. But more important to that, what I did with James, and this is one thing that I do with clients every time, we developed a strategy for future filings. One of the things that I noticed with James is he didn't have a good record-keeping system. When he came in to meet with me, he had those shoe boxes full of receipts. He wasn't making quarterly tax estimates and all those kind of things, and that's part of the reason that he had that penalty from the IRS. So I helped James develop a tax strategy for his future filings and set up a better system. Now, you might be asking, Ralph, what was the result? Well, I'm happy to say James avoided future IRS issues. He's still a client. He saves thousands of dollars. And every year he enters tax season without stress. So Kassandra, and anyone else listening, here are what I think the 6 main situations that signal it's time to hire a tax professional. Number one thing, and I think this is the biggest of them all, it's when your tax situation is too complex. Now, complex for you and complex for me could be different, but here's some heavy hitters in that area. If you're self-employed, if you do your own side business where you're not getting a W-2, I think this is a prime candidate for when you need help, because there are things that you can do to reduce or mitigate those tax things. You may have to pay self-employment taxes. That triggers quarterly filings. That's one of the things that James was missing out on. Another thing that James was missing out on was depreciation. He didn't realize he could write off his truck. He could write off his tools. And then the other side of what James was missing out on is he was actually helping some people, and they were helping him. And he actually had some subcontractors, and he didn't realize he needed to file 1099s for them. And we're just now wrapping those up here because they were due at the end of January. So that's number one thing. If your tax situation is too complex. Another thing, and I see a lot of clients that come to me because of this, it's when you've experienced a major life change. Now, that could be something like starting a business, like what we talked about in the first one. But maybe you got married. Unfortunately, maybe you got divorced. I see a lot of clients when they're buying a home or selling a home. And another big one is when they receive an inheritance. So a lot of times that requires special guidance. And I'm going to be doing a show about that in just a week or so as well. So if you've had one of those major life changes, maybe, like I said, you got married, you got divorced, maybe you had a child, maybe a child has gone off to college, maybe a child is married themselves and they're no longer in the nest. Those things definitely trigger complications with your tax returns, and that's a time when I think it's great to reach out to a tax pro. Number three thing, and this is what brought James into the office, if you receive an audit or a notice from the IRS or another state, you don't want to navigate those waters on your own. Like James said, he said, Ralph, I am out of my element. If you give me a couple 2x4s and a claw hammer, I'm ready to go. But when he got that IRS notice, he just did not know what to do. And here's the deal. A professional like myself, we can communicate with the IRS on your behalf to resolve these issues. We'll understand the process. We'll help you get your ducks in a row before it becomes too late. For example, I just dealt with a client last week. They were actually getting audited by the state of Delaware. Now, this is an interesting situation. This particular client, him and his, I guess she's his fiance for lack of a better way of saying it, they moved into an assisted living facility. Well, the main reason they moved into the assisted living facility is because my client, he needs that 24-hour day assistance. Well, his fiance really doesn't need that assistance. So when we did the tax return, we were able to take a medical deduction for the 100% of the cost of his care. Well, when the state of Delaware saw this huge deduction, I'm talking close to $100,000, of course, the red flags go off and they say, well, wait a minute, we want to understand this. So they dug in a little deeper and they reached out to the client and said, hey, we want document evidence to show what's going on here. Clients gave me a call, said, Ralph, I got my ducks in a row. This person, it's organized. I think I mentioned him on the show a week or two ago. So they sent me back their documentation and I sent that off to the Delaware auditor. And the Delaware auditor came back and said, yeah, we like what you sent us, but we're going to make a huge adjustment because we noticed that your fiance lives in the, we'll call it an apartment, but it's an assisted living facility apartment, lives with you. And I said, well, that's not really fair because that's not the way it works. So anyway, long story short, we were able to negotiate with the state. We got him 100% of the deduction he was looking for. But if he had tried to negotiate that on his own, he would have run into a problem and probably would have ended up paying the state some money or wouldn't have got as big a refund. So if you're audited or you receive an IRS letter or a state letter, that's the time to reach out for help. Number four thing, and I found this when I was working with James, if you're missing deductions or credits. See, the truth is there are deductions for home office expenses, like James had missed, equipment write-offs, energy efficient credits. A lot of people aren't aware of these because they don't fall into that normal category. Oh yeah, I got my W-2, I have my mortgage interest, I have my charitable contributions. But the thing is, people who are professionals in this realm are aware of those things. We do continuing education credits. I have to do 80 credits every 2-year cycle because we're always learning new stuff. The IRS is coming out with new pronouncements. The Congress and the president are sending out new tax laws. So you may very well be missing deductions or credits, which could, the truth of the matter is they could actually pay somebody like me's fee 10 times over because you missed on. Number five thing, if you've made mistakes in the past, James had to admit, he said, Ralph, I was out of my element. I was working on this and I really didn't know what I was doing. Because as James learned, those errors can lead to penalties. They can lead to you missing refunds. And a lot of people figure, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just send them the money they asked for. But do you really know if it's correct or not? In James's case, when I looked at his return, he actually had missed some deductions. And yes, he owed them a little money because of some other issues. But he had been leaving money on the table. And the final reason, and this is James's reason, and Kassandra, I think this is yours too. If you're stressed or overwhelmed, because I meet with so many people, they say, Ralph, the reason I come to you is really simple, man. I want peace of mind. I don't want to worry about it. I could probably do this myself. It'd probably take me all weekend to do it. But man, I don't want to be bothered with this. They don't want to be stressed. They don't want to be overwhelmed. They look at it like, yes, it's going to cost me a few bucks. I know it's done correctly. I don't have to stress about it all weekend. So that's the big deal. Like if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's the time to reach out. So let me go over those again. These are the 6 situations that I think it's time to hire a tax professional. Number 1, your tax situation is too complex. Number 2, you've experienced a major life change. Number 3, you've been audited or received an IRS or state letter. Number 4, you're missing deductions or credits. And that's one of those ones you might not know until you ask somebody. Number 5, you've made mistakes in the past. And number 6, and I don't want to undersell this one. If you're stressed or overwhelmed, don't let tax season rob you of your peace. Well, now let's talk about the benefits of hiring a tax professional. Now I've told you why. Well, let's talk about the benefits. And the first one might surprise you. I think you actually can save money. Now you might be saying, Ralph, wait a second. You're saying to me that I'm going to pay somebody to do my taxes. I'm going to come out of pocket with money, and I'm still going to save money. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I have many clients that have been doing their taxes themselves. They came in the next year because maybe one of those life events happened. They bought a house. Maybe they had a child. Maybe, one of those things happened. And I looked at their tax return from last year and I say, hey, guess what? You didn't realize it, but you left this money on the table. You missed out on these deductions. So I 100% believe that you can save money because as a tax professional, we know those deductions. We know those credits, and you may not even know they exist. So that's the first thing. That's the first benefit. Second thing, saving time. I've had many clients say to me, Ralph, I used to sit there all weekend long and I was laser focused. My wife knew not to mess with me. My kids knew not to mess with me because, man, I had to get this tax return done. And I was wrestling with forms and I was wrestling with calculations. And, sometimes, we've got some good software out there, but even that software takes time. So if you think that you're hiring a professional, it's going to save you money. And I think number 2, it's going to save you time. Number 3 thing, and I think a lot of people will understand where I'm going with this. It gives you peace of mind because there's no second guessing or worrying about making mistakes. That stuff can rob you of your peace. And if you reach out and hire somebody, you can have peace of mind knowing that you're in good hands. Now, I'm going to talk about what to look for when you hire a tax return person. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about some huge red flags to watch out for. Like I said, this is tax week. So make sure you stay tuned, and I'm going to talk about what happens if you get a notice. And then I'm going to talk about what happens if you get audited and what are the red flags for audits. Now, the final thing I think it brings, if you reach out and hire somebody, one of the benefits is IRS representation. And I can't undersell this. It's great to have a professional that can handle communication with the IRS or handle communication with the state. There are often times when the IRS will send out a notice and people get crazy. And like I said, I'm going to talk about that in a day or two. But you get that notice, you don't know what to do with it. But if you've had somebody professionally hire your return, now I'm going to talk about those people that go away after tax season. Those aren't the people to hire. But somebody that's a professional like me, I'm a licensed Delaware public accountant. I'm here year round. I'm not going anywhere. When you get those letters, when you get those notices, like my client with the medical expenses, he simply scanned that notice and sent me and said, Ralph, can you handle this for me? Absolutely, I can do that. So those are the things that you benefit from. So like I said, number 1, save money. Number 2, save time. It's going to give you peace of mind. And also you've got that representative to help you in the event that you get some kind of notification. Now, Kassandra and everyone else, listen. Here's the thing I want to stress. You don't want to wait until you're drowning in stress or overwhelmed by the unknown. If you're thinking about, Ralph, do I really want to pay somebody to do my taxes? Because here's the deal. You deserve peace of mind. You deserve that freedom to focus on what matters the most. Focus on your family, your work, and your faith. Don't focus on tax preparation. And that's one of the reasons I founded Saggio Manager Group. That's my accounting practice. And we're here to take the burden off your shoulders because, listen, we don't just file taxes. That's the easy part. The things that I do with clients is I create a personalized plan to minimize what you owe, or maybe help you get a big refund. I help you save money. But most importantly, I protect your future. And that's the thing we're all looking for, because here's the deal. Tax season doesn't have to feel like a nightmare. I've had clients say to me, Ralph, going to you is like going to the dentist. But I still come because I want that peace of mind. So let me help you guide through it. I'm going to encourage you to schedule a tax appointment with me today. It doesn't matter where you're located. I do taxes for people all over the country. In fact, I do taxes for people all over the world. With Zoom and other online tools, it's really simple to have me handle your professional tax preparation. If you're interested in doing that, I'm going to encourage you to go to askralphpodcast.com/tax-prep. That's askralphpodcast.com/tax-prep. And let's get started together today. Well, let's move into our reflection questions. At the end of the episode, I always like to talk about some things that we can reflect on so we can kind of digest what we learned. So here's the first one. Are you spending more time and energy on taxes than you can afford? Think about that for a second. What I just said there. Are you spending more time and energy on taxes you can afford? You might say, Ralph, wait a minute. I see your fees and you start off at $400 for a tax return. That's correct. I do, because I'm a professional. This is what I do for a living. But how much time, how much energy are you putting into doing it yourself? And it's taking you away from time with your wife. It's taking you away from time with your husband. It's taking you away from time with your kids. It's stealing your energy. Listen, make an investment and put this in the hands of a professional. It doesn't have to be me. Maybe there's somebody where you live that you feel very comfortable with. But ask yourself that difficult question. Are you spending more time on energy on taxes than you can afford? Second thing, thinking back, you just finished your tax return. Are you wondering, have you missed deductions? Have you missed credits because you didn't know about them? Those online tax software, they can't ask you questions. They can probe you for certain things, but they can't ask you and have that dialogue like somebody like myself. When clients come in and meet with me, we have a conversation. We talk about what went on during the year because I know the questions to ask. That software is not going to help you on that. And number 3, how would hiring a professional free you to focus on your priorities? I don't think taxes need to be your priority. Now, they're certainly my priority. This is what I do for a living. But I don't think they need to be your weekend task. So consider those 3 things. Again, number 1, are you spending more time and energy on taxes than you can afford? Number 2, have you missed deductions or credits because you simply didn't know about them? And number 3, how would hiring a professional free you to focus on your priorities? And you got to answer those questions and think about it. Ponder on those. Well, Kassandra, let me just say this. Thank you for trusting me with your question today. Now, tomorrow, we're going to talk about who can you trust for your taxes and how to choose the right professional. Like I said, this is tax week, and we're going to continue our discussion tomorrow. And remember this, my passion is to help you achieve financial success. I want to see you live out your dreams, and I want to see you grow in your faith. And I know together, working together, we can master your finances from a Christian perspective. So as I always end this show, stay financially savvy out there, and God bless you abundantly.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph Show. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media, Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.